Creating a Lino design and blog. Here's some resources you might need.
Okay, today I'm going to show you how to design and create a lino cut print. To start with, you're going to need some work, some previous work, any studies that you've done that you quite like the idea of creating a print from, some paper, some tracing paper, some lino or linoleum, a pencil for your design, and then some marker pens or fine liner, something to just mark your design. Okay, so to start with, I am going to use my lino and I'm just going to mark on my new piece of paper just the outside of it, so as I know the dimensions of my lino, the dimensions of my print, and so I don't make my design too big or too small. And put your lino to one side, we'll work on that later on. And then take your tracing paper and your design. Now I've chosen my ink design with my flowers. You can choose any of your work to develop from or create a new piece of work. It really is up to you how you what you want to do, what kind of design you want to make. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my pencil and I'm going to trace over some of the lines of this design. I'm going to simplify what I've done. So my ink drawing was very much a line-based drawing. When I create a lino cut print, it's going to be focused on negative and positive space. But I'm just going to trace over the outside of this flower. You might decide not to trace over the entire design. You might want to just trace over elements of it, or you might want to combine different studies together. Okay, once you've done that, we're going to transfer our tracing onto our new piece of paper. And to do that, turn your paper over and place it inside the area for your print. My study transfers really well to the size of my lino that I'm using. But if yours is too large, you can just simplify it, make it smaller, redraw areas. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to transfer this just by applying a bit of pressure over the back of the drawing. And then once you've got that, you need to then use a black pen to draw over the top. But this is where it gets a bit tricky. So when you create a print or a stamp from your lino, you're going to be cut negative areas away. You're going to be cutting negative areas away, and the positive areas will remain. So when you draw onto your design, you need to make sure you know what areas you want to be black in your print and what areas you want to be white. So you can colour in any area that you're going to cut out, or if you prefer, you can just write a B for black and a W for white, where you're going to keep those areas. I might switch to a thinner pen. Okay, once you're happy with your design and you've worked out what areas will be positive and what areas will be negative, you can then transfer that to Lino. I have switched pens and I used a finer pen for finer detail. You don't necessarily have to put that on at this stage. You can add that to your Lino. You can also, if you're feeling brave, you can transfer your tracing directly to the Lino and then work it out from there. But just be mindful of the fact that if you do use a permanent marker, you're going to have trouble getting that off if you do make any mistakes. Okay, so I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab another piece of tracing paper. And I'll keep this as my design, so I'll probably add this to my sketchbook. So it's a nice way of breaking down the steps as well. And then what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to trace the design now I've got a clearer idea of how that's going to look. Okay, and then once you've done that, you can transfer that design again to your Lino. Just apply the pressure over the top of the pencil so as it transfers. And then I am probably going to keep referring back to my design and my previous work as well, just to give me ideas on how I'm going to develop this print, because although I've decided on a design, it doesn't mean to say that I can't continue to develop as I'm working. Okay, once you've done that, then the next thing to do is to start cutting out. And let's talk a little bit about health and safety before we get started on that. So what you should be doing is making sure you are referring to the handbook, because that will give you some ideas on health and safety. You will need for this task a lino cutting tool, which looks like this. Sometimes they are wooden handled. And then usually if you buy one like this, it does usually come with a selection of different blades. So they're all different sizes, they are numbered, and you'll see that they're for all different reasons as well. So this one is for cutting outlines or edges. They're usually quite sharp. And then some of them are a little bit more chiseled than others. So some of them have a wider blade and others have a finer blade. So it's all about choosing what's right for you, really, and for your design. I would advise using a bench hook as well. These are a good idea. So what these do is they hook onto the side of the table, and then you can place your lino so as it's resting against this block of wood here. So when you are cutting, you have a little bit more support. Especially if you've not done any lino cutting before, I would advise that. Okay, as I am fully experienced, I'm not using a bench hook today, just so as you're able to see better what I'm doing. But I'll just show you this as well, but they will come with instructions if you've bought one and not used one before. But what you do is just the rounded edge, just loosen up the handle like this, place that inside, give it a wiggle so it's in nice and firmly. Also make sure you're not holding onto the sharp part of the blade, and then just screw that in place so it's nice and secure. Okay, so to get cutting, always make sure your supporting hand is away from the blade. You're never cutting towards your supporting hand. It's really tempting to do that because it just feels like the natural way to sort of hold it in place. But it's really important that you don't do that, otherwise you may cut into your thumb the same way I did when I was 15 years old. So keep that hand away from the blade. Maybe hold it in place away from the blade over here. And then what I find easiest is to use my supporting hand, hold it with my hand over the top of the blade, and then use my forefinger in this sort of little nook here, and that helps to sort of support it. Okay, a common mistake people do tend to make is when they're cutting, they tend to sort of go down at an angle. And obviously, if you do this, it's going to take a lot longer and you're going to cut away too much lino. So we don't want to cut away too much lino. We want to just take off the top layer. And the way to do that, it might be worth having a little practice piece of lino so you can just get your bearings with how it cuts away. So I'm going to be using lots of vertical lines in the background of my lino, my design. You might be someone that wants to get rid of all of the lino in the background and just have these flowers visible. But I really like the texture that a lino cutting, a lino print creates. So I'm going to keep some of that texture to start with. And what's really lovely about lino cutting is you can just keep working into the plate. So if you're not happy with the first print, you can work into it and then just keep working until you or keep cutting away until you get something that you really love. Yeah, so keep that as it is. I actually need a slightly smaller tool for cutting around the edge of my flowers. Another good tip is to make sure you are moving the lino rather than moving yourself. So just make sure you're turning that around and you're cutting around elements of your design rather than moving yourself around. Okay, so I'm just going to get cutting into this now. Okay, once you've cut out a lot of your design, you'll get a really clear idea of what your print is going to look like. So any raised areas will be black or the block print in ink colour that you choose, and any of the areas that you've cut away will be the paper. So what I'm going to do is just going to continue to work into this to add a little bit more detail to the floral elements of it, using a finer tool or blade, and then I'm going to have a go at creating a print from it.